Hey guys, it is Janie with Prime Purpose, and I'm here with Dr. Chelsea Drda. So sorry, we had some technical difficulties earlier, but now we got it working right. So I'm so thrilled to have you on the show. So Dr. Chelsea is a chiropractor and speaker, and she's very much a health advocate and teaches people about self-care. So before we go into what you do, can you share a little bit of your journey with us?
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Janie. You know, I have gone through this incredible transformation myself. When I was in my early 20s, I was 70 pounds heavier. I was miserable. I didn't have any energy. And so now that I've gotten to this place where I know I can live and thrive, I'm so excited to help other people because I know it's possible. I've been there myself, and I know that change is absolutely possible. And self-care really is the answer to achieving what you want in your life.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I'm so excited to be able to find out more. Can you share more? Because you do speaking as well as caring for patients. What is your main message?
My primary message is really that self-care is the absolute primary thing we should all be doing. And it really doesn't have to be complicated. You know, we get these ideas, oh, I have to do colonics, I have to go get expensive therapy, I have to do this, I have to do that. And yes, those things may be necessary down the line. But if we reduce our daily stressors, and in chiropractic, we talk about the three different kinds of stress. That's physical, chemical, emotional, or we call them the three T's: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. If we work on reducing those stressors, that alone can do so much for our health. And then if we need add-ons, certainly we can achieve those as well. But those are the absolute basics: reducing your physical, chemical, emotional stress.
Can you tell us a little bit more about those three T's? Go into more detail about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, people think about, okay, I've got emotional stress. You know, I'm worried about money. I'm worried about my relationship. I'm worried about my kids. I'm worried about where I stand in the corporate world. You know, all of those are emotional stressors that we think about every day. But then we also look at physical stressors. What are the micro traumas we're experiencing, like sitting all day, every day? You know, that causes deactivation of our gluteal muscles, that destabilizes our pelvis. That alone, especially for women, is such a key issue. But then, of course, what am I doing? I'm looking down at my cell phone like this. I'm looking down at my computer like this because I haven't learned how to type properly. You know, my laptop is too low in comparison to where it should be. Fun fact, your the top of your monitor should be at the level of your eyebrows or higher. You know, other physical stressors, like your bed might be too soft. You might have had a real trauma, like a skiing accident or a car accident. And then, of course, the chemical traumas, like being exposed to fumes at the gas pump, taking in too many chemicals, you know, not eating nutrient dense food and instead eating things that are full of chemicals and not really full of nutrients that our body has to then process out. You know, even just basic cleaning chemicals like Clorox and Lysol, we're learning that these are not good for our health. In fact, if you look at journal articles about respiratory health, they're starting to say, hey, you know what? Those chemicals really aren't good for us, because then our bodies are still taking them in and we have to process them out. You know, your skin in particular is so important because it's our largest organ and it takes in more than we think. You know, people think, oh, it's fine, I don't need to wear gloves when I'm cleaning. But at the same time, we know if you put on a patch, if we're quitting smoking or hormone therapy, anything like that, that it does actually get through the skin. So it matters.
No, definitely. Those are all things that we don't really think about every day, that there's everyday stressors. And it's really good that you're bringing to light, oh, we have to take note of the things that are environment, as physically as well as mentally. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. So tell us about self-care. That is your thing. Can you go into, first of all, your philosophy about that? And what are some of the myths and stigmas that surround the concept of self-care?
Oh, I love that you asked that. So my basic premise is put on your own oxygen mask first, right? When we travel, what do we hear every time we get on the plane? You have to put your own oxygen mask on first, because if you don't, you won't be able to help anyone else. And that is really my philosophical basis for self-care. If you are not functioning at your best, how are you supposed to give your best to your world? And again, it is relatable to everyone, but I especially target moms because moms are the first people who are going to give that up because it's instinctual. We want to give the most to our children, to our partner, to our job, but then we're giving less than we could. Another great analogy is looking at a cup, right? If the cup is full, you're going to be able to pour out more liquid than you would if the cup was only half full or a quarter full. So not just for yourself, but also for your world. One of the basics I talk about a lot is sleep. And people say, oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead. I can sleep on the weekend. Let me tell you, I just got back from a long trip. You cannot catch up in just a couple of days. If you're sleep deprived, you really don't ever truly catch up. And it's really important to make sure, hey, am I getting the energy level that I anticipate? Is my phone at 100% before I head out to start my day? Okay, relate that back to your personal energy level. Is my personal energy level at 100%? And therefore, can I do all the things I feel like I need to do in my day? We think of, again, especially as women, that self-care is selfish, right? Well, I couldn't possibly do that for myself. It's too much. I've got a lot going on. I just don't have time to take care of myself. When actually the opposite is true. You don't have time not to take care of yourself, because if you're not caring for yourself, things are going to take longer. You're not going to give as much energy to the situation, and you're just not going to be at your best.
That's so true. I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think especially with different cultures, obviously I'm Asian. The Asian culture is constantly serving and basically the whole concept that the self is not important, or it's not okay to take care of the self. And I think we really need to debunk that myth. Same thing with super religious communities. You can't serve to the point of depletion. And I think it's really important. I think your message is going to really help set people free today in realizing, whether it's you're a stay-at-home parent or whether you're in the working world, you absolutely have to take care of yourself. And so I'm really glad that you're bringing that to light. So I want to shift over to talking about work culture. Obviously, I teach as a life coach about having a positive and thriving work culture. I think particularly in Western culture and in the States, people get really wrapped up in their identities and what they do. Everything from the corporate world, as I said earlier, the stay-at-home parent, nonprofit, entrepreneur, and really the outcome is the same. How do you help people understand the importance of self-care no matter what they're doing? And can you talk more about that specifically in a business or corporate environment?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest basics that I think is important is just to break it down into little steps. One of the things I love about self-care, and I teach this in the corporate world as well, is the fact that it really isn't complicated and it really transcends the environment that we're in. It sounds kind of pretentious, but the person who's in the corporate world, the top executive, is going to need the same basics of self-care, at least, as the stay-at-home mom, because we all need sleep. We all need to make sure we're getting enough water intake. We all need to make sure we're getting nourishing food. And then, of course, there are different add-ons for different people depending on where they're at. Some people might need hormone replacement therapy if their hormones have gotten very out of balance. Some people really might need to go see a therapist to help work through some of their mental and emotional traumas. But the most basics, at the most basic level, are all the same. And that's what I love about it. I feel like this message is transcendent. And, I would say similar things about life coaching, correct? There's the fact that even though you work with people in different environments and you can customize it for them, they really do come back to the basics, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. But just the fact that we all need to say, okay, you know what? What are my priorities, especially? And what are things I can take off my list and delegate? And again, I think that's true for the executive. I think that's true for the stay-at-home mom, but how you apply that is different in different scenarios.
That's so true. It really is important. It goes across the board, and you're absolutely right. It doesn't matter what I'm teaching with life coaching. You and I had discussed this earlier about how in the corporate world, a lot of times when we think about where I'm in a toxic job environment. And most people think about, how can I leave this job? How can I go to a different place? When that's really not the issue. Sometimes it's working too many long hours. It's not getting enough sleep. And it comes back to the basics of self-care. It's like, we got to stop looking at that as being a dirty word, and it being something that helps us each to take care of ourselves so that we can thrive for those around us, not just for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. In chiropractic, we talk a lot about adaptability, and that's really what it comes down to. Now, granted, you could be in a toxic work environment. There could be a toxic hierarchy, but even if there is, your bandwidth for handling it will be significantly improved, again, if your battery is at 100%. If Absolutely. You put that oxygen mask on first, if you're your best, you have a greater tolerance and can adapt and thrive within those boundaries much better than if you're depleted. If you're depleted, it doesn't matter where you are or what situation you're in, you're not going to be happy, period, end of story. Or if you are, you're not going to be happy for long, and then you're going to chase the rabbit looking for that next best thing.
And that's what we don't want. We want to teach people to look at the situation from a higher level, from the big picture. How is my own worth and well-being affected by this? And how can I start to contribute to that? So excellent, excellent message. I wanted to ask you, since you work with patients as a chiropractor, is there a pattern or a number one problem you see that you face with them?
Two, actually. I'm so glad you asked that question. So the first, and I just happen to have my model on my desk, is restriction of the tailbone. And that sounds so silly, but your tailbone sits in the middle of your pelvis. The two big bones of your pelvis sit on either side of your tailbone, right? And what do we see? People have restricted tailbones because they sit on them all day. Today's society, we move so much less than people ever have in human history. And it's so different. It's dramatically different what's going on. And so what happens, guess what? All of your nerves, or what's called your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and restore part of our nervous system that is absolutely vital for our health, sit here and here at your atlas. That's the top bone in your spine. This sits directly under your skull. So why do I see this out of alignment? This is related to sleep patterns, breathing rate, heart rate, stress level, and also is connected to digestion. So what do I see when this is out of alignment? People have trouble sleeping. Even if they're getting enough sleep, they have trouble sleeping. They have headaches. They have digestive issues. Oh, and by the way, these carry down into infants and small children as well. It's absolutely mind-blowing. So the point of all of that is that I see people with issues with rest and restoration. That is the absolute honest truth. People just can't connect with that part of themselves in charge of rest and restoration.
Now, can you tell me how all of that's integrated together with the physical as well as the mental? Can you go more into detail about that?
Yeah, so in chiropractic, we talk about something that's called the vertebral subluxation complex, and it's something that is connected to basically how your nervous system interacts with your world. So, for example, if your atlas is misaligned, that's this bone right here, and it's actually dimming the amount of communication between your brain and your body. And that's a very simplified example. But what that does is it means that you're not experiencing your world exactly the same as you would be otherwise. You're not going to interact with your world as much because your body's trying to protect you. So as a result, guess what? You're getting less sensory input. Your adaptability is lowered. Again, your tolerance goes down. You're not functioning the way you should, is really what at the end of the day. It's kind of like turning on a dimmer switch. You're just decreasing how you interact with your environment, thinking, oh, okay, well, I'll just be sheltered and protected here. But actually the opposite is true.
That's so fascinating. You don't really think about how all of that's connected together and the communication with the brain. It's just really neat that you went into detail about that.
Yeah, have to turn those light switches on so we can see what's in the room. And it's the same thing with regards to the brain and the body and seeing the problem. You know, a lot of people think chiropractors are kind of funny because we talk about how it's so important to have neurological integrity, neurological connection in order to have true health. But if you think about it and you say, oh, right, but if I'm in the dark, I can't see my surroundings. That's how the brain feels when there's neurological disruption, where there's that disconnection that happens. You know, same thing. If my phone is not connecting, I'm not getting to the web page I might. Oh, if my webcam isn't connecting, I can't see the person I'm trying to see. And, you know, we talk about it casually. Oh, they say, oh, chiropractic's for neck pain and back pain and headaches. But I'm talking about the magnitude of health because, again, if I can't see the problem, I can't fix it. And that is truly why I do what I do every day, because it really, when you start creating those connections, you just watch people blossom and be connected and aware and alert and alive and thriving. And that's one of the reasons I've gotten into talking about self-care so much, is because I don't just want to help the people I can help with my hands. I want to see people doing this around the world.
Definitely. So rest and restoration. And what specifically do you do with your patients to restore that?
Chiropractic adjustments, for sure. That is the biggest component that I can do. But again, that's one of the reasons I talk about self-care so much, is because if I can get them reducing their stressors, they're going to adapt better on their own and they don't need as much care. So I tell people all the time, the more you do your homework, your self-care homework, the less I need to see you. But the less you do your self-care homework and the higher your stress level, the more I need to see you, because it means that those stressors are sitting there turning light switches off, and I have to come in more frequently to turn them back on. So it's really about finding that balance. So I have actually this really amazing technology in my office that allows me to look at the nervous system from the inside and evaluate the function. Most American adults who come in my office are functioning somewhere between 50 and 55% of their capacity. I've only ever had one adult come in the 70 range, and it's because her self-care is militant. It is such an integral part of who she is. And she said, no, I'm not allowing this to affect me the way it affects other people. And she's doing amazing things as a result. But I know I can see the connections and the differences between people as a result of this, and just putting my hands on them and talking to them, you know, asking people, what went right with your day? I don't know. That's troubling.
Which definitely, it is a troubling concept. And I think that leads me to my next question. If somebody's watching this and they're a little intimidated by the idea, it's like, how do we start with self-care? I don't have the money to go see somebody. So I hear that you have a workbook. Can you talk about that?
I do. I love my self-care workbook. And the reason I created it is because I know that sometimes people need someone to take them by the hand and lead them on the journey. So actually, even as a precursor to that, I tell people all the time, if you want to start changing your self-care, start with 10 minutes. You can do anything for 10 minutes, and you always have 10 minutes in your day. But the workbook is for somebody who's like, okay, yeah, I get it, 10 minutes, whatever, but I need a little bit more of a helping hand. And that is exactly where that comes in. And you can say, oh, that's right. I do have a guide telling me how to get there. So one of the exercises, for example, is literally just coloring. And that sounds really funny, but if you can take 10 minutes to sit there and color, your brain's not going to think about other things. We talked about priorities. What are some things you can cross off of your to-do list? What are some things that would be harder for you to let go of? These are all examples of exercises in the workbook that just help you get started and help you get thinking on that train of, okay, how do I make a change that's actually going to create a lasting impact in my life?
I love that. I love that there's creative aspects. Being a creative person, I always love when you can color and doodle and really kind of let your mind go free, because that is really sometimes even where the solutions come. So I love that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. So we are in the midst of the holiday season. Do you have any specific tips when it comes to self-care to give people, especially with the harriedness of, you know, family and all of everything, the lights, the gifts? I mean, it just work, all of that on top of it. I'm sure you have something that valuable to share with your viewers and mine as well. What are some of those tips to deal with that?
I'm grinning because this is my favorite thing to talk about. So if you've heard of the movie, I love the movie Bad Moms. And I haven't actually even seen the Christmas one, but I love the concept of bad moms because we get this idea that we have to have everything perfect, especially around the holidays. So my first tip is for really young parents with really young kids. Guess what? Your kids have no idea what day of the week it is. They don't know when Christmas is unless you tell them. So if you're running behind, just tell them you got the day wrong and push it back a couple days. And it's really, as adults, we cling to these ideas about, well, it has to just be this way. And I know that this is how it's supposed to be. They're little kids. They don't know. They haven't had that ingrained in them yet. So you have a little bit more flexibility. Now, certainly as your kids get older, that changes a little bit. And of course, your family has expectations. But, you know, it's really a good idea to ask yourself, what about this is important to me? You know, what part of the holiday season is important to me? Is it your faith? Is it a religious celebration? Is it, oh, I have to be about gifts? Are you someone who's really interested in service? Do you love the food aspect? Focus your energy most specifically and in its most concentrated form on the thing that matters to you most, whatever that looks like, and pour your energy there and everything else lines up around it. Because then you start realizing, you know what? I don't really care about decorating my entire house. Maybe I can have just a corner that's dedicated to the holiday. Oh, okay, you know what? I'm really not someone who cares about, you know, giving lots of gifts to every single person in my office. Maybe I can organize a secret Santa and that helps decrease the financial burden. There's always an answer, but we just have to ask ourselves, what are my priorities in this season? What are the things that matter to me and my family most? And you know what? If I end up having to use gift bags and I don't hand wrap every single one with bespoke wrapping paper, it's going to be okay. And if I don't make 8 dozen cookies and I buy them instead, it's going to be okay. There's always something that we can give up and have joy in releasing that frees up time for things like sleep, making sure we get enough to eat that's actually nourishing, and the things that we know innately we're going to be better people doing.
It's so true. I love how you mentioned earlier about how we need to ditch the whole perfectionism, because that just runs us into the ground and it runs everyone else around us into the ground. I talk a lot about that in one of my books, but I think the key is focusing on excellence and what you said with what's important to you, your family, the things that bring you joy. That's so key. And I feel like we need to focus on that more and give people permission to enjoy things. We're in a world where I think people are really caring more about content than it is about presentation. And that's true in almost every capacity. It's really about the essence of it instead of the appearance of it, right?
Yes.
So I appreciate that so much. Well, Dr. Chelsea, it has been so amazing to have you on today. I'm really thrilled that you took time out of your schedule to share about how important it is. And I want to really emphasize right now, self-care is not a bad word, and it's not being self-centered to take care of yourself, and recognize that your identity as a person as a whole, you're going to be able to output so much more to everyone else around you when you're healthy and whole. So I want to thank you so much. Can you share on Instagram, where can people find you? Is it, yes.
Happy Motivation for Women. That is the easiest place to find me. And then I also have a page for my clinic as well, which is at Atlanta Natural Health.
Okay.
And I just want to follow up what you said, Janie, about self-care just not being a dirty word. I think actually also, if we embrace it and we speak about it, you also set other people free, because then they realize they don't have to be perfect either. And again, like you said, seizing that excellence in what matters most.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Chelsea. Well, you saw earlier, I'm going to show again her SelfCare Workbook. That is the web address for that. And you can find her on Instagram as well as on the website that she just listed. And just got a couple announcements here. My ebook, The Power of Inclusion, is out now on Amazon Kindle. We talked about a few concepts today. Perfectionism is an issue, so we want to make sure that we focus on excellence versus perfectionism. And Janie, Liou, for some of you who are coming on and you're Dr. Chelsea's followers, you can find me here at these websites and learn more. But I want to thank you again, Dr. Chelsea. It's been awesome. As a person, I'm really, really honored to know you. And these broadcasts, yeah, they're just a great way to really be able to share in public. But for me, it's the greatest honor and privilege is to know really good people. And you are one of those. So thank you so much.
No, likewise. Thank you so much. I really enjoy talking to you, and I'm so glad that your audience has you as a resource. This is so important.
Thank you. Well, guys, it's been great. I can't wait to talk with you again about my next topic. And thanks again. We'll get back on soon.